The day the super empath walks away from the narcissist. Have you ever felt your heart beating a mile a minute, caught between fierce compassion and the realization that your kindness has been weaponized against you? Imagine that moment when the empathy you've poured into someone who constantly demands more, never gives back, and thrives on your pain suddenly shifts. In today's video, we're going to explore that pivotal day when the super empath finally takes a stand and walks away from a narcissist. You'll learn what inner signals and external events align to create this turning point, and why recognizing them can be the most courageous act of self-love you'll ever make. As a clinical psychologist, I've seen countless empathic individuals struggle to set boundaries with narcissistic partners, friends, or family members. In this discussion, I'll share the psychological underpinnings of why empaths stay longer than they should, how narcissists exploit compassionate hearts, and what it truly feels like when compassion morphs into self-sacrifice. By the end, you'll understand not only the red flags you might have missed, but also the healing steps that follow the decision to leave. This topic matters because when empaths finally reclaim their power, they don't just free themselves from toxic patterns, they also model healthy boundaries for everyone around them. Walking away isn't about punishment or abandonment. It's about honoring your own worth and paving the way for genuine reciprocal relationships. If you've ever wondered whether it's possible to love deeply without losing yourself, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. When we think of empathy, we often picture a quiet kindness that reaches out to comfort another person's pain. Empaths, by their very nature, absorb emotional currents like sponges, sensing hidden fears and unspoken needs with remarkable clarity. In contrast, narcissists draw energy from the attention and validation they receive, building their self-worth on admiration and control. On paper, these two profiles seem worlds apart, yet they often find one another locked in a dance where compassion meets charisma, and generosity meets entitlement. At the heart of this dynamic lies the concept of empathetic resonance, a psychological process where empaths literally feel what others feel, thanks to neural circuits sometimes called mirror neurons. For the super empath, this resonance is amplified. They don't just notice tears or tension. They carry those emotions in their own bloodstream, experiencing another's hurt as deeply as if it were their own. Meanwhile, narcissistic traits, grandiosity, need for constant praise, and a profound lack of genuine empathy create a void that super empaths rush to fill. Clinical research on personality disorders and attachment styles helps us understand why this pairing can become so magnetic. Narcissists often learn to mask deep insecurity by mastering charm and manipulation. Empaths, driven by a secure or anxious preoccupied attachment, learn early to prioritize others' well-being, sometimes at the expense of their own. When a super empath meets a narcissist, the empath's drive to heal and protect meets the narcissist's craving for admiration and control, setting the stage for cycles of idealization and devaluation. Understanding these core concepts, empathetic resonance, narcissistic entitlement, and attachment patterns, gives us the vocabulary to recognize where compassion crosses into self-sacrifice. As we move forward, keep in mind how these forces interact within real relationships, shaping behaviors that feel both intoxicatingly close and painfully one-sided. The super empath's greatest struggle often isn't dramatic arguments or overt cruelty, but the slow erosion of their own sense of self. Imagine waking up each morning feeling a knot in your stomach, knowing that any moment you'll be called upon to soothe your partner's frustration, as if your own needs were a distant echo. Over time, small requests for reassurance turn into relentless demands for attention. Why didn't you respond to my text right away? Do you even care about me? Each question feels urgent, and each answer somehow never enough. The empath bends over backward to calm the storm, only to find the storm has moved on to the next area of their life. Friends, family, career, using guilt and emotional withdrawal as weapons. Meanwhile, the narcissist's tactics remain subtle, almost invisible to an outside observer. One day, they lavish praise. You're so kind, so understanding, and the next they criticize any show of independence as selfish or cold. The empath, attuned to every shift in tone, scrambles to repair the bond, believing deep down that if they can just be more caring, more patient, more available, the imbalance will right itself. But instead of finding relief, they discover a relentless pattern of idealization and devaluation that leaves them doubting their own judgment. Isolated from loved ones who see only their constant apologizing and self-sacrifice. In that cycle lies the core issue. A caring heart pushed beyond its limits until compassion becomes the chain that binds. Beneath the surface of every super-empath narcissist relationship lies a web of psychological dynamics that quietly tighten their grip over time. In many cases, the empath's unwavering drive to soothe and repair springs from a deep-seated belief that love means sacrifice. Perhaps you remember Anna, who spent years tiptoeing around her partner's moods, convinced that her calm reassurance would eventually heal his hidden wounds. Unbeknownst to her, each act of care only reinforced his need for admiration, and taught her that her own comfort must always come second. This unbalanced give and take becomes self-perpetuating. The more the empath strives to fill the narcissist's emotional void, the more that void seems to expand. Psychological research on trauma bonding and intermittent reinforcement helps explain why walking away feels almost impossible. Every time the empath fears abandonment and consoles the narcissist, their brain rewards them with a rush of relief and hope, until the next moment of devaluation resets the craving. Over months or years, these tiny victories and setbacks wire the empath's brain to expect validation only when they surrender more of themselves. Add to this the empath's fear of conflict, often rooted in an anxious attachment style, and you have a perfect storm. The empath remains trapped, believing that loyalty and patience will eventually bring balance, even as their own identity dissolves in the process. Beneath the heavy fog of guilt and obligation, the first step toward freedom begins with a single breath of recognition that your own needs matter just as much as anyone else's. In practice, this means pausing in the middle of a conversation to check in with yourself. Where does my body feel tense? What emotion is rising in my chest? By learning to name what you feel, I'm anxious, I feel unheard, you interrupt the automatic cycle of overgiving and open a small window for self-care. From there, the super empath can start to experiment with tiny boundary tests. Maybe it's as simple as taking a 5-minute walk alone when your partner's demands grow too loud, or telling a friend, I need to focus on my work right now, I'll call you back. These small no's are practice runs for the bigger ones to come. You might journal afterwards. What thoughts crept in? I'm being selfish. And how did you challenge them? My time matters. Over weeks, these micro-victories build a neural pathway toward self-respect. Outside support is just as vital. Sharing your story with a trusted friend, support group, or therapist shines light on the patterns you've been living in the dark. You'll discover you're not alone in feeling torn between compassion and preservation. Role-playing an assertive reply. I understand you're upset, but I can't respond right now. With someone who cares about you transforms abstract advice into lived confidence. Finally, as your practice deepens, you'll craft an exit plan grounded in reality. Safe spaces to go, financial or emotional resources to draw upon, and self-soothing rituals like breathwork, creative expression, or a mantra that center you when doubt strikes. Walking away from a narcissist isn't a leap into the unknown so much as a step back onto solid ground you built for yourself. In that moment of departure, every boundary you've tested, every truth you've named, becomes the lifeline that carries you to healing. Almost overnight, those small acts of saying no and checking in with yourself begin to bloom into a surprising sense of relief. You'll notice your thoughts quieting when you're alone. The constant gnawing worry that you haven't done enough for someone else starts to fade, replaced by an unexpected stillness. For instance, Sarah, a super empath I once worked with, told me that after practicing micro-boundaries for just a month, she finally slept through the night without rehearsing responses to her partner's criticisms. That night of uninterrupted rest wasn't just physical recovery. It was proof that her needs mattered and that self-respect could coexist with compassion. In the weeks that follow, these ripples of self-care transform daily life. Tasks you once dreaded, asking for help, voicing your opinions, even ordering your favorite meal in public, become moments of quiet triumph. You may find your creativity returning, curiosity blossoming, and long dormant dreams stirring awake. And as you step fully into your own world again, you model healthier dynamics for friends and family, showing that love doesn't require self-erasure. Ultimately, reclaiming your boundaries doesn't just end a toxic pattern. It lays the groundwork for genuine connection, emotional resilience, and a life guided by both kindness and self-worth. As you've seen, recognizing the moment when compassion becomes self-sacrifice is the first act of courage on the path to healing. From naming the tension in your body to testing small boundaries, seeking support, and crafting a grounded exit plan, each step rewrites the story you tell yourself about worth and love. You don't just walk away from a narcissist. You walk toward a life where empathy and self-respect coexist, where your heart remains open without being endlessly depleted. I invite you now to share your own experiences or questions in the comments below. What boundary did you practice first? How did it feel to say no out loud? Let's build a community where every step toward self-honor is met with understanding and encouragement. Thank you for spending this time with me. If you found value in this conversation, please like, share, and subscribe so we can continue exploring the delicate dance of empathy and self-care together. Until next time, take gentle care of yourself. And remember, walking away can be the bravest act of love you give yourself.